Our next speaker has led many initiatives with Lufthansa Group over the past 25 years, including integrating Swiss International Airlines and leading Europe's largest frequent flyer program. Please welcome Chief Commercial Officer for Lufthansa German Airlines, Jens Bischof.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's really great to be here at Phocuswright, and I know this is a particular tough session since we're hitting the end of the day. But I try to keep it brief, but interesting and exciting, I hope. So I'd like to share our thoughts at the Lufthansa Group on how the evolution in the airline retailing space will happen, where we stand today, and also where are the benchmarks and where we'll be headed. Who does state-of-the-art e-retailing today? And we all know, as you can see, Amazon is always a very popular example. Why is that? They're getting the important things right. They have ease of navigation. They showcase the most popular products. The user is basically able to experience the product with pictures, videos, and also ratings from other users. The recommendation of related products is there. And of course, these recommendations are often paired to your personal preferences. So the customer are able to create their own product combinations or bundles, if you will. And that always comes along with a very easy and handsome checkout process. So what do you think, who would be the champion of e-retailing tomorrow? And maybe we're going to look at the automotive industry. Might sound strange, but the automotive industry made big steps in e-selling. The majority of the shopping process today is already online. And with all current progress in the tech space, the entire car shopping experience could be automated in the future. Let's imagine that the customer configures the dream car online, which is already happening today. The manufacturer sends off the dream car in a self-driving mode to the customer for a test drive. And of course, the customer logs in, and of course, all personal settings are retrieved. The customer test drives the car, or is driven, maybe, and adjusts preferences based on the test drive. And of course, additional services are offered, such as service plan, maybe a factory pickup, maybe personalized driving instructions, or even a driver training on a professional course. The total cost of ownership is also shown, and basically the customer can buy the car while he or she is test driving with a fingerprint. This is a highly personalized and automated shopping experience where I think we will see a lot to come over the next years. And of course, if we look where we stand in the airline industry today, and Alison, you got to help me now because we got to switch to the next slide here. Thank you so much. This is how over the last 30 years we have tried to assemble and sell our products. As you can see, the offer creation is very limited. The airline delivers the components such as fare, schedule, availability, and the distribution channels are basically building the offer. It's like the car manufacturer is sending all the components of a car to the dealership, and basically the dealer is assembling the car before handing it over to the customer. Also, the display capabilities are extremely standardized and therefore facilitated basically the commoditization of air travel. The majority of the flights are sold this way, still today. And there is no indication of the product you buy. No quality, no product experience for the customer, absolutely nothing. Basically, the airline ticket is sold based on price and schedule. Granted, it is now slowly improving with the addition of rich content, as we all know. And I also want to mention, of course, all the GDS interfaces like the Sabre Red Workspace, travel ports, rich content and branding, and other things. But still, this is not where we need to be in order to showcase our product. Based on this display, you can end up with a customer experience like this, or you could end up with a customer experience like this. And this is, of course, very different. We're investing at the Lufthansa Group billions of dollars and euros, 3 billion over the last 3 years, in onboard and on-the-ground services. Airplane offers or airplane purchases obviously not included in that number. And the customer has no clue about this information while hitting the purchasing button for a flight. And I'm not talking about a one-size-fits-all solution. I'm talking about my experience as an airline customer. It's important for me to know what I really buy. I'm talking about what I should know when I'm about to spend several hundred or even $1,000 on a flight. And I'm talking about I do not want to speculate about the seat I will be sitting in for several hours. Just imagine for a second tablet computers would be sold in the way we're selling airline tickets today. I give you a little bit of a translation. AS stands for Asus, SA for Samsung, and AP, you all know that, for Apple. Which product would you pick? It's obvious. The information is very limited, no reviews, no pictures, no add-ons, and of course we all know that the reality looks totally different. Would Apple really have today's success without being able to showcase the product, have true comparison shopping, distribute their products through all the channels they determine themselves? This is reality in modern e-retailing. And we need fully flexible offer creation by the airlines, of course, based on customer demands, highly customized. And I'm not only talking about implicitly about fair families. That's introduced into the market. And we're trying to deal with that also on the sales side. As an airline, we live in a truly unrealistic space where we have only 26 price points to sell a flight from A to B. We call them the booking classes. Coincidentally, by letters. And coincidentally, 26 letters of the alphabet are making up our booking classes and our price points for purchasing a product. And that is, of course, where the customer preference in order to hit the right price is by far too little. We, of course, need endless price points on the price-demand curve. And I talk, as you can imagine, about real-time dynamic pricing. Walking away from booking classes, making every possible price available which has the highest likeliness of getting purchased. And the preferred purchase point of the customer, which can be, of course, our own .coms. It could be OTAs, OBEs, corporate travel agents, TMCs, whatever you have. And let's see how this could look like. This is just an example, but it could be any touch point. Again, the app, the .com, the OBE, TMC, OTAs. The search is already improved versus today. Searching for specific service components where a customer or agent can see the best match to the customer's demand. Which offers include the requested components, and the first elements of rich content are available. Options for upgrade and additional service are available. And rich content provides the shopper with a true product experience. Also, ratings are there as a quality indicator. And the offer to the customer is what they really want, and the product is obviously showcased during the shopping process. This creates true transparency for the customer. So what's the vision then, basically? An interactive, multi-channel sales with dynamic offering. Different customer groups have, of course, different demands. And we, as airlines, we have to meet these demands. To achieve this, The airlines need flexibility to create, distribute truly dynamic, real-time offerings. Full content agreements didn't even allow us to do so. They were focused on standardization across all channels and customers. We are evolving as an industry towards a personalized, real-time, dynamic retailing environment. And if I say that, I don't only mean B2C. I'm also talking about B2B. At the Lufthansa Group, we're already starting this, and it's not a future which is years down the road. We're starting this real-time dynamic pricing already with one of our group companies, Swiss International Airlines, in the first half of 2017. And of course, new distribution technologies are necessary to fully leverage these capabilities. This does not mean that we will only sell on our own .coms or through direct connects. We, of course, continue to sell via GDSs as well. And who knows who new distribution channels will arise. From my point of view, it's pretty simple. Multiple distribution solutions will lead to more competition. They will lead to more innovation. They will lead to more efficiency and also to more cost-efficient solutions. And ultimately, this will benefit the customer, individual or corporate. And this is our vision at the Lufthansa Group for modern retailing in the airline industry. Thank you very much.
Very focused on that because, at Sabre, we look at it on our partners, be it on the supplier side of the equation, which is airlines, as well as the agencies. Our responsibility is to make sure that we can absorb that content that essentially Jens is trying to sell. How do we make sure from a complicated perspective, we can really deliver it to partners like Amex GBT and the capability of selling it? When I look at what's going on, it really does get into the complication. You can't underestimate the complication of really what Jens is going through right now. I went through that about 10 years ago at Air Canada when we introduced branded fares and understood what you're capable of doing in home market capability and changing, but the complexity associated with it.
So you understand the needs. Do you agree with the methods that Lufthansa has taken so far to get here?
Yeah, here's the important thing is they're focused on driving more revenue is what it boils down to. And in doing that, what are the capabilities essentially of technology as well as those who help sell products to be able to do that at the end of the day? Where we're focused on is how do we work really with airline partners as well as our agency partners to create more revenue, which really then translates into where does the economic model go over time?
Absolutely. And Philippe, you seem just ready to poke some holes in Jens's comments. So is his vision achievable?
I think the vision is achievable if I look at the screen with Apple, Samsung, and I don't remember the third one. It will be achievable if you have only Lufthansa, 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 or Lufthansa Swiss and Austrian. Because, I talk for the business travel. Most of our customers are thanking us to make them 3-4 propositions depending on where they want to go. Mm-hmm. So the process is starting that they say, I want to go somewhere. First, we need to guess with what Jens is proposing if Lufthansa is a candidate to make a proposition on this trip. And second, if you have found that Lufthansa is on there and we go to their system, behind it, when you have made the booking, we need to serve the customer. Mm-hmm. And we need on the offline, we need to be able to serve the customer. And I don't know for the leisure travel, but such a solution where we cannot have the complete proposition coming from one answer that the GDS is delivering to us is complicated because we will have to rebuild something on top of each of the direct connect. Right. And maybe we'll call it a GDS or an aggregator, but we'll have to rebuild it.
Absolutely. And Jens, is the direct connect model, is that scalable? How far can you take that?
Well, I think we've gathered at least valuable information with the first direct connects, which we have established with our biggest corporate customers. And they're going extremely well, very smooth. And of course, there is a lot more to come. We've always also established direct connect with all major tour operators in Europe in the meantime, which also proves that even on this side of the business, it's going pretty well. I just can say, I mean, we're trying to change something or enrich something as a distribution system as such, which basically will see many more innovations to come. And direct connect will not be the only one, which will be added over time.
Absolutely. So Mike, you watch this marketplace closely. You talk to a lot of airlines and agencies. Do airlines want the same things that Lufthansa wants, or is this a Lufthansa problem and a Lufthansa solution?
I think the IATA NDC initiative is a strong statement of broad industry interest in putting airline website content out into the agency channel. That's its purpose. But I'd agree with Sean that the pace of change needs to be faster. Today we have the electronic miscellaneous document, which is the e-ticket for ancillaries, and we've got the e-ticket. Today in the United States, this year we're going to do about 150 million airline tickets, and we're going to do less than 1 million ancillary sales associated with those. 1 in every 150 tickets is going to have an ancillary sale. So the agency customer community is missing out on a lot of that business, and certainly we at ARC would like to process those sales. But our job is to facilitate commerce between airlines and agents, and there's more work to be done.
Yeah, right. So, Jens, so part of the distribution strategy that Lufthansa embarked on last year, there's a surcharge on Gds Bookings. I know there's more to it than that, but that was one of the more controversial aspects of what you were doing. We've seen a lot of anecdotal evidence as well as some real data to see that people were booking away from Lufthansa. So did it cost you business? Did you put revenue at risk by going this route?
I'm very glad for the question, actually, Jay, because I mean we're posting a record result again this year, which hopefully implies that we're not on the wrong way. And since we've introduced the new model for more than a year now, it won't go away. And it was not just a negotiation tactics, as some of the market observers might have thought. So quite frankly, we've seen a decent shift also to the online channels. Of course, this is not reflected in MIDT or other data, and that obviously helps to offset the effect. I can only say, bottom line, it was a very successful and necessary move for us.
No, I mean, I cannot give figures, but for us, we see it as purely a price increase.
Right.
So when an airline had a fare at 200 and Lufthansa was 200, now Lufthansa is 216, and depending if it is a corporate mandate to fly Lufthansa or not, if not, they choose the 200. So we see some volume changes. I mean, I cannot give figures, but definitely, if Lufthansa can afford the price increase, good for Lufthansa. If there is a more competitive tool, I mean, the only thing I can tell you is that for the last year, when the program has been introduced, we didn't make one booking on Lufthansa.com. So we still do 100% of the bookings through the normal channel. And if it is too expensive, we book another airline.
Yeah. So Jens says you're calling it a success. I know Sabre has had some remarks contrary to that. Is this a strategy that's doomed to fail in your view?
Well, I go back to, I think there's phases of the strategy, and when you look at it, and relative to the earnings, I mean, I think fuel will be down, €1 billion for Lufthansa this year relative to where they were last year. So that is a benefit to essentially profitability is the fuel decline in what's taking place. When you make moves like this, the easiest moves are typically home country capabilities and what's taking place. The other thing that, as I look at the entire thing is it's just not Lufthansa, but the world that we live in today is very connected. And what I mean by that is there's the alliances, there's joint venture relationships, there's interline agreements. So this is sort of a first phase of what I would consider to be a multi-phase strategy that they're looking at. But I think it gets much more complicated as they move forward.
Right.
And I agree, by the way. I mean, Jean is totally right. It takes quite some time to really enrich. And it's really about enriching the choice of distribution, which we basically want to see in the market and which we want to utilize in order to better display the quality of the products. And of course, nobody expected, by the way, that changing a legacy system which was pre-internet for 30 years now will happen within 6 months. That's definitely not the case. And again, it's not about pushing something out of the market. It's about encouraging innovation, trying to let the evolving technology make use of all the capabilities in order to sell products in the way like other industry do.
Hey, Jay, can I interrupt? I just want to ask a question of actually all the panelists. So I think a really big question is, will other airlines follow Lufthansa with the surcharge? If they do, when will they? And what does that mean for the likes of the traditional distribution world, the GDS companies, the online travel agencies, and the TMCs?
I can answer for the TMCs. As I said, if another airline or other airlines adopt the same system, as I said, since we need to compare, since we need to integrate the offer, we will either have the GDS to do something on top, or we will have to build our own layer, and this layer will have a cost. I mean, it does happen already today with some airlines, like some low-cost carriers, where their content is not in the GDS, and it costs us far more to integrate them in the offer, and we are charging for that. So everything which will generate what I call content fragmentation will generate additional cost for the distribution channel, therefore for the customer.
I think that was a pretty fair comment of Philippe, because, I mean, we're looking at it as if Lufthansa, coming from this side of the river, has introduced a totally new system. We know, of course, that many airlines coming from the other side of the river never worked in that space. And we're now, with the fragmentation, which basically Philippe already mentioned, we do have a situation where, of course, more choice is coming up. And we need to have standardized possibilities to compare that.
I just want to interrupt because no one's actually answered the question yet. So will other airlines follow Lufthansa? Could you all make a prediction?
Well, I mean, I cannot comment for other airlines, but what you can see, obviously, that if you have to do that, and it took us more than 2.5 years in preparation to get our contracts, current contracts, aligned to a certain expiration date, to really change from a full content agreement to a non-full content agreement and negotiate the new contracts. So typically you are bound up in long-term contracts, and I can, as I said, not speak for other airlines, but this is definitely a factor which you have to consider.
Anyone else want to speak for other airlines?
I don't see it happening in the US market. I don't think that any carrier's got the kind of market presence to make a Lufthansa scenario stick. To me, the question is, are we going to have more of an evolutionary approach where we'd be making incremental change that the path we've been on? Or are some of the big players going to get together with other big players, as Lufthansa has done with Siemens and Volkswagen? Is that going to happen in the United States? That seems, because we've got content divergence, more things you can do on carrier websites all the time, and that's a trend that I don't think is going to stop. Will big players say, look, I want that content, Lufthansa, American, Delta, United, I'm willing to do something different from a distribution standpoint? Will that happen or not? I tend to think yes. I think we'll see some hybrid between evolutionary approach and that.
Listen, I think you're going to find that, and this gets back to what Jans is doing at Lufthansa, is they're going to look at it long-term relative to, is it within their best interest or not their best interest to do it. From Saber's perspective, it's very focused on our technology and our capabilities and what we need to do to enable going forward. As I look at carriers around the world, I can tell you that I'm probably seeing the best relationship of North American carriers alignment with the TMCs and what's taking place. So there's been a true evolution. We were talking about NDC before. We're working with airlines around the world, and I'm talking big global airlines that actually aren't following NDC standards for paid seat capability. They're still going back to teletype and EDIFACT technology. So as we talk about evolving, we also have to go back and look at those that are saying, I want to evolve, that they have to evolve their own technology to be able to move to a new world. So I think you have to be very careful relative to the pace of change and what is taking place.
But I think what is important as well is all these airlines you are talking about, they are hosted in Sabre or Amadeus. So as a distribution layer, what you don't understand is that you are requested to go to another layer, to go back to the system which is exactly the same as the GDS. So I don't want to start to talk about the financial flows, but we will never accept to make additional technology investment only to solve a financial flow issue.
Yeah.
So we don't want to have to develop additional technology when the technology today is efficient, and that's the name of the game.
And the comment that Philippe made relative to the PSS system, and this gets very important back into distribution. At the end of the day, when you sell products and services, you have to deliver those products and services. And it has to go back into the PSS system in some form or fashion today on how that gets done. That is more work relative to technology and evolving, which means there has to be more thought relative to airlines and how they're going to help essentially evolve the model there. So it's just not on the distribution side, be it indirect or direct. It's actually how do you operate day in and day out.
I'm not quite sure if you really talk about, looping this back into another layer and adding more complexity and more cost to it. I'm clearly talking about addition of distribution possibilities. And as I said before, if we're going to walk away like the entire industry will do from booking classes, if we have more than 26 price points, what are we going to do tomorrow? This system where we are right now will not be totally capable of handling this development. And as Jean rightfully said, it'll take some time to adapt technologies and find new ways of distribution. And NDC is a great addition to that, by the way. We're supporting in the Lufthansa Group NDC to a great extent. But for me, we're building a new car, and NDC is a new cylinder in a new engine in that new car, but not the entire answer to it.
Can I ask each of you to make one prediction for the next 5 years in airline distribution? We all have, different visions on, what modernization means, what's going to happen next. But what is going to happen?
If you look 5 years ago, the US Airlines and the North American Airlines tried to do exactly the same thing. Now, they are signing full content agreement with the GDSs. So I hope that the GDSs will do what they have to do to bring to us NDC, the full content, and a more efficient, because as I said before, we don't want to have to develop this layer, but I do believe that there will be some airlines which will be outside, like some tried to do it 5 years ago. But I do believe maybe the GDSs should change their name and call themselves aggregators, but we will still need some aggregators between our distribution layer and the content.
So there'll always be something in the middle. That's your
Yes,
point, right?
definitely, right. Because we are not each TMC, each online travel agents, but at least in the corporate business, each TMC will not rebuild the access to X number of airline systems to be able to integrate their offer.
Sean?
If I look at it, and I look at it from the perspective of, I look at the performance of airlines, and if you look at airlines around the world, and you look at the last couple of years, and you go back to the US relative to when they started charging for bags and for seat assignments, you saw a huge increase in unit revenue. In essentially 2013, 2014, that flattened out. Last year, unit revenues were down about 3 to 4%. This year, unit revenues, and I'm speaking more of the North American context, are down 6 to 7%. So like any business, Jans as well as airlines around the world are looking for how do they drive revenue. To me, that gets into the technology piece, and I believe that you have to have that aggregator technology that is able to absorb the content that wants to be sold, because it's about how do you create more revenue sales for the airlines, for hospitality, how do you be able to do that, and then how do you absorb that, and how do you pivot to be able to provide it to the points of sale, so be able to provide it to the TMCs of the world and others of the world that can sell that. And I think that's the evolution you're going to continue to see, because the economics are required.
Quick travel agency market share will not go down in the next 5 years.
We will see more choices in distribution, and also it's not only about revenue, it's also about cost efficiency. And I want to see the distribution landscape being enriched want to see more innovation, want to see more content being displayed at a better cost position and generating more revenue.
Thank you very much. Jens, Philippe, Sean, Mike, and Jay.